I think we move on to the president's or to the superintendent's report at this point.
Good job, Ms. Salas.
Okay.
That was a good summary. We had, as Ms. Salas stated earlier, we had the special committee of the whole board occurred on June 28th. The administration provided an in-depth draft action plan for the upcoming school year. Dr. Freitas and his team are working on implementing that plan and planning and preparing for that plan over the next 4 weeks or so till we have our first day of school. Teachers report, I believe, on August 12th, right? There's 2 institute days, and then students report on August 16th. I did send out an email blast to staff and students yesterday reminding everybody that we will be starting school on August the 16th in a traditional school schedule, full in-person learning. The main open questions that were covered in that committee presentation were touched upon in the updated guidance that was released by the IDPH and ISBE on Friday afternoon. And basically they have adopted the CDC's guidance for returning to school and in-person learning. First and foremost, the most important thing is all those organizations recognize the importance of getting kids back in school full-time. And that will be our top priority at RB, is to do it in a safe fashion and have kids back in school full-time. The 3 open questions were mask requirements. Open question number 1 was mask requirements. And so we started to implement this over the summer based on the updated athletic guidance that came out from the IDPH. And it will be a very similar stance for the opening of school. Mask will be required for anybody that's unvaccinated. That goes for students, staff, and visitors. We did confirm with legal that we can collect that information or confirm vaccination information from staff and students. Whether we will do that or how we will do that and enforce those expectations is still to be determined. It's too early. I know there's a webinar by our legal counsel tomorrow. All the superintendent and principal associations are meeting because each school district will be treated, have the flexibility to treat this a little differently. But we do have a high vaccination rate in our 3 main communities that feed into the high school. I know we were at about an 85% vaccination rate amongst our staff before we left for summer break. And so we will continue to enforce what we've been doing this summer, which our masks will be required for all unvaccinated students, staff, and visitors to the school. Social distancing was still an open requirement, and again, it's still, they clarified in the updated guidance that 3 feet is the, should be the social distancing that schools try to implement, but they did preface to say that if it gets in the way of in-person learning, other mitigations can be taken so that if you can't do 3 feet, it should be as much as possible. But we were already practicing 3 feet before in the 4th quarter when we were able to do 4 days a week of in-person learning. So we will continue to do 3 feet. Proof of vaccination, I touched on already. Quarantine, students and staff who are vaccinated, as long as they're asymptomatic, do not have to quarantine. I know that was a big issue with parents because students, you know, we went to the state. One thing the state did back in the spring is they updated the guidance on social distancing to 3 feet, but for contact tracing purposes, they left it at 6 feet. So even though they were saying it was okay to have kids 3 feet apart, when you had to do contact tracing for a close contact or a positive case, you went in a 6-foot radius from that student. So we're going to use 3-foot radius throughout this upcoming school year. And again, the proof of vaccination, the confirmation of that, is just more or less to help with contact tracing. That's one of the most important things. That will help expedite contact tracing so that we can quarantine any students that haven't been vaccinated or staff that haven't been vaccinated that need to quarantine. We still will have asymptomatic testing in the nurse's office. We implemented that at the end of last school year, and we'll have that again to start this school year. We're looking into whether or not we need to do screen testing for high-risk athletics in the fall for students who are not vaccinated. We're still working through some things with that on whether or not we will implement that. But I do think, based on the draft that we shared at the committee on June 28th with the board and where we are at with the updated guidance, we're in a really good place. I think we're ready to bring students back. The PowerPoint has been posted online. We had our first day of residency today. I'm sure Dr. Freitas will touch on that. We've already been implementing some of these mask guidelines this summer with our summer camp. So again, I do think we're in a strong place to return. Knock on wood. You know, I don't want to jinx anything, but that's my update in regards to returning in August. Fine arts staffing. You know, the high school had a recent resignation, as the visitor mentioned. Aubrey Prince did a fantastic job as our vocal music director and all the things she did in our music department and as an instructional coach. So I wanted to provide an update, and we'll wish Aubrey the best of luck as she moves to Oregon to take on a new position, but also provide an update on the staffing process. The approved staffing for next year for the music department was 2.6 FTE. That will remain, so there was no reduction in staffing. Miss Prince and Mr. Baum were the two full-time employees, and Mr. Loeb was the part-time employee. Now with the resignation, with Miss Prince resigning to take that position, the overall staffing remains 2.6, but Mr. Loeb will now become the full-time based on seniority and contract language. The new hire for the music department will be part-time. Mr. Loeb's assignment still will include the District 96 sections, and we understand the importance of trying to continue to build our orchestra numbers, so we'll continue to have that as part of his full-time position. You know, the vocal music person is going for approval tonight to the board in closed session. The building administration did a very robust interview process and presentation of candidates. I know they involved parents from the fine arts music sponsors, as well as I believe some of the finalists had to conduct a choral performance with madrigal singers, so the students were involved in the selection process, and we think we have a really strong candidate. Originally, that candidate was slated to be a 0.6. We think there's a possibility to make them a 0.8. So we are moving in the right direction in regards to the fine arts, and that should hopefully be approved tonight. Curriculum advisory, there was no update. You know, back again, as I touch on the curriculum advisory, you know, just with the fine arts, you know, we have to remember that the student course selections, and I think the parents summed it up, that even though numbers were a little down this year in music, our visual arts numbers went up by 2 sections. So we kept staffing in the visual and performing arts. It just was more on the visual side this upcoming school year. So with some new candidates, and hopefully with Mr. Lowe working at District 96, we can continue to grow the performing arts side of our fine arts department. Facilities Advisory Council, we have no update at this time. Finance Advisory, the tentative budget was approved at the June meeting. Dr. Smetana updated the budget with the June 30 actual. She'll cover those in the presentation, in her presentation tonight. She also added information yesterday to the packet from the TTO, so I think our financials for June 30th can be discussed tonight. Personnel Advisory, we're still trying to fill a few vacancies, both certified and non-certified, but we will be on pace to have everybody fully staffed for the start of school in August. Included in your packet tonight for the Policy Advisory Council is Press Packet 107 for our new board members. That's a service we pay for out of the School Board Association. They help keep our policy manual up to date with legal updates and any changes in state statutes or school code. So what will happen from now till August, I will try to coordinate a Policy Advisory Council meeting to review Press Packet 107, and we'll bring recommendations to the August board meeting. Policy 185, which was regarding the remote learning, I still want to keep that tabled at this time. I think with the updated guidance, we're in a good place, and I think the specification from the ISBE that remote learning should only be provided for students who cannot get vaccinated and are subject to a quarantine. I think we're okay there to implement remote learning. We still have the flexibility to work with West 40 and one of their alternative learning opportunities, which the board approved in June. So I think we can keep that tabled for right now.
I would ask a question. Do we assume that parents that have had a concern have already reached out, and are we already underway with
We have
those?
fielded one request, and when it was clarified that it will not be instruction from RB teachers, and it would be at West 40, we were working with those families to try to have their student attend. So
Okay.
It's been minimal requests from any families in town.
I just wanted to make sure that people who did have concerns knew to reach out.
And Dr. Freitas will continue to advertise that in his communications to students and staff. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And purchase, sale, lease of land, I have no updates on that. So I believe that's it for the superintendent report. I went kind of quick, so if there's any questions, I'm open if anybody has any questions.
you're going to send out a doodle for us for policy between now and the next meeting?
Yes, Ms. Nardi will work on scheduling that.
Okay.
And that we can still do if advisory council, if it works, if we need to do that via Zoom, we can do that via Zoom.
Or maybe we can.
That's you and I.
Yeah, it's just us, maybe we can even do that tonight while we're here. If you get your calendar, if you want to pull it up.
Yes.
Oh, you mean come out with the date before we
After
do?
the meeting.
I thought you meant do the
I thought you meant
meeting.
review the whole packet.
Date to save.
Yes, yes, that would be great.
Maybe
And
before the
yes,
meeting. Sure.
5 emails, you know?
Yeah.
yes, yes, I have everything right here.
Good point.
That's all we need.
It's hard,
Yes.
we're a hard group to schedule, so the better we can do on
Everybody's
that,
busy, busy,
absolutely.
busy. Okay, great. So sometime.
Any
between
other
But we're all here
questions?
now, why not just do it now?
Yeah. Any other questions for the superintendent?